Hey everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I'm your host, John the Bod, aka the Bod Father. I have an awesome interview for you guys lined up today. I have none other than Mr. David Ellefson on the phone right now. We're going to be discussing his new book that's out right now, My Life with Deth. And David, man, you play for the mighty Megadeth. How's it going, man?
No, everything's going great. We're having a good time out here. It's kind of our last little trip here before the end of the year, before we head into the holidays, and it's plus we're getting to we started the world tour back in May over in Europe, and then we came across a big part of North America with Gigantour over the summer. But it takes 2 or 3 trips across the USA to hit every city. So this trip is hitting a lot of smaller cities, a lot of smaller towns, and getting down into Florida, and even getting a little deeper into Texas and some of those kind of places. So it's great to be out playing the songs for everybody.
You have your autobiography that's out right now, My Life with Deth. Let's talk about that a little bit. Now, this covers 30 years of your life, pretty much. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it covers 30 years of Megadeth for sure, and then all 49 years of my human life here on planet Earth. It was kind of cool to go back and start. To start obviously at the origins. I mean, a lot of times in interviews people ask, tell us about your early musical life and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of starts, when you're, for me, 11, 12 years old. To go back and really color the story of where I grew up on a farm in Minnesota and just how different that was from the life I lead today. In a rock and roll band, yet all the things I learned both in the wholesome farm life as well as in the rough and tumble rock and roll life come together, and ultimately that's my life with Deth.
Now, you've been with Megadeth since 1983. You're one of the founding members. It took you, I think, 3 years to put this book out. Is that correct?
Pretty much. I mean, the timeline to publish printed material it's about a 3-year timeline, and I knew that from the first book that I did, Making Music Your Business: A Guide for Young Musicians. That I started writing in 1994, and it didn't hit the streets until 1997. So I was already aware of the concept, the writing, the editing, finding a publisher, the editing again, and finally hitting the street bait of getting it out. It takes a long time. An album takes about a year, really, from the time you start writing it, recording it, setting it up with the media and all the press and everything, and then finally launching it. So records take about a year, books take about 3 years.
Yeah, and I'm assuming, too, a lot of crazy editing, too, like going back and have someone to read this and see if it makes sense, and take this out and put this in. I mean...
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm very hands-on, and I told my story to Joel. He put it on paper, and then I read it back, and then did extensive rewriting from there because I wanted it to read like it was me speaking. And sometimes speaking your words, it's the same thing with you on your end, you being in the media. There are people that, radio's a no-brainer, of course, because you're just talking through the radio, but when you read a conversation back on paper, it looks really ridiculous. There's kind of like, sort of, there's all those kind of things. And I remember back, I did an interview with, I think it was Guitar World or Guitar Player magazine back on the Countdown to Extinction record. It was an interview that me, Marty, and Dave did together. And I remember this interview really made me sound like I knew what I was talking about. It was very well written, and it really made me appreciate top quality journalists and their value in taking an interview and putting it down on paper so that it not only is informative, it's witty, it really captures your character of you as a person, but it's also well written. And in writing well doesn't compromise the conversation you had. And that was how I looked at this book. Joel could only do so much because it wasn't his story, it's not his life, and they're not his words. So by and large, he was really a counselor to me in guiding me through the process, getting me started with it, and I would go back to him and kind of almost like a manager. I'd say, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And he would give me guidance and counsel on it. So, but the words in that book are very much my words, and Joel certainly flavored and colored some things in a way that really gave it some pop. So it was really a good partnership between us.
David, did you plan on writing this book, or did it just, people give you advice, say, go ahead and do it, man? I mean, I think you should do this.
Joel was the one who came to me and asked me. I mean, a lot of people said, "Oh, dude, I can't wait to read your book someday. You must have a lot of stories being in Megadeth." And yeah, there are a lot of stories, and some of them, quite honestly, you just can't print. And you shouldn't. I have a credo in my life that I have the right to tell my story, but I don't have the right to tell your story. So throughout the book, of course, there's a lot of characters, in the room with me and part of the journey and everything. But, I can talk about me and my view of things and my thoughts and feelings on a particular matter, but I don't have the right to throw people under the bus and try to make myself look good at their expense. As funny as those books are to read, you're kind of like, to me, it's sort of, it's a bit of it kind of puts your character on the mark, And some people, quite honestly, have to write those books to say, man, I got hosed for so many years, and I'm going to finally get my vengeance, and I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to tell everybody. And in some way, they feel somewhat vindicated, So I can't speak for anybody else. I can only speak for me. And for me, that was my credo: is tell my story, don't tell someone else's story.
Right, exactly. A lot of respect for you for doing that too, because a lot of them don't care; they'll just put it in there regardless.
Yeah, and aside from legal coming at you and saying, "Hey, change names," or you got to go ask permission. I figured if I had to go ask permission from someone, if I could put it in there, then it probably isn't something I should put in there.
Yeah, exactly. What's your favorite part about the book when you was going through the writing process? What made you think, "Hey, man, I'm going to love this"?
There were some cool stories, that were fun to tell, especially the early days when we were putting Megadeth together. Even in the middle, there were some kind of funny days before, like, the drug and addiction stuff got really dark. There were fun days there for sure, but I think certain, telling, like, the early childhood, like, really letting people into my life to say, hey, this is who I was as a kid growing up on a farm in Minnesota. This is really what that life was. And farming is a lot like rock and roll. You're independently employed. You own your own business. There's a lot of things that can it can be feast or famine, literally.
True. And
there's things that can come along that change the course of your year that you have no control of, like a weather pattern, a storm or a hail can wipe out your crop. Just like all of a sudden, in the early 1990s, Megadeth was on top of the world as one of the biggest heavy metal acts, and next thing out of nowhere, Nirvana and Pearl Jam show up.
Yeah.
And heavy metal went dark for the most of the 90s. I mean, that was my year of, 10 years of locusts and almost feast or famine, I mean, Megadeth was one of the few bands that survived that. And a lot of bands in the 2000s were able to kind of pick themselves back up and get going again. But Megadeth truly worked through it. We survived it. We lived through it. And that, I think, speaks to, first of all, our passion to want to be here doing this. And also just, it means everything for us to be here doing it. So we were willing to take some chances and go through some transitions to try to survive it.
Even though that, when Pearl Jam and all those bands come out, the grunge days, metal was still around, and I was still jamming to you guys. I still love your music. You guys helped me out through some tough times, and I've just been a fan of your all's music ever since the first day I've heard you all. And Peace Sells.
Thank you.
Peace Sells is my favorite song by you guys.
Well, I appreciate it. Peace Sells is one of those tunes that you could call it a political song because it's about politics. It's about the government, so to speak. But it's really just a song about people,
right.
And I think what we've found over the years is when you write songs about people, your songs never go away and they become timeless. And I think some of the songs that fit into that are songs like Peace Sells, In My Darkest Hour, Symphony of Destruction, Trust. These songs were all number one or chart-topping hits, and they still stand up today when you hear them because it's something that really it's heart-to-heart, human-to-human kind of relational lyrics, and those things will be around forever.
What do you want fans to take away from your book, My Life with Deth, when they read this, David?
I think the biggest thing is at a young age, I didn't find music. Music found me. And I think if the theme more than any through my book is that when you feel a calling in your life to go pursue something, even as crazy as moving to Hollywood to go be a rock star, I mean, no matter what anybody says, no matter what anybody tells you, you have to follow your hunches, follow your heart, and follow your dreams, because that is who you are designed to be during your lifetime on this planet. And I hope that, if nothing else, my book shows that I went against a lot of odds, fought through a lot of things, addictions and people ripping us off and all kinds of crazy stuff, But when you're really following your heart, it always works out for the best, because that's the way it's really meant to be.
Now, I had read a little bit on this book. You talk about your addictions and things like that, and finally coming to grips and your faith and everything. What made you say, hey, look, I've got to stop this addiction, I've got to get help? What made you really seek that out?
Well, yeah, it's funny, because when I started writing the book, a lot of these books, of course, they kind of follow the VH1 Behind the Music template, which is start from nothing, grow to this huge success.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, drugs and alcohol, managers rip you off, you're in destitution, and then there's this kind of salvation, and you rise to the top again, right? Well, a lot of these books follow that same formula. And, of course, drug addiction and the harrowing, depths of that whole thing is fascinating to readers who don't ever go through that. For me, I certainly was in that, but that was, it was 10 years of my life. It was a very small part of my life, even though those years changed my life forever, for sure, and made me much more thankful for everything I have and for the second chances and the, sort of a rebirth and new opportunities. The addiction thing is not the theme of my book by any means. It's
right.
Just a part of one period of my life. And I think the bigger story is the last couple of decades that I've been away from the drugs, how my life has blossomed and really just been so fruitful in the years away from that. And that may not have happened had I not gone through those dark years. Mm-hmm. So, I think when I was in it, there came to this point where I went, I didn't get into this for girls. I didn't get into it for money. I didn't get into it for sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I got into it purely for the love of rock and roll.
Right.
And I kind of fell in love with the game. I kind of like the, music business. I like all that it is. And, here I was coming up on 25 years of age in this real dark, addicted place in my life, and those realities, and quite honestly, it's because I started praying, if you want to know the truth about it, as unheavy metal as that sounds. Sometimes when you're down to nothing, God's up to something.
Yeah.
And I just started praying, just going, God help. I don't know who to turn to, I don't know what to turn to, the band's not working, I'm broke, I don't have a girlfriend, I'm down to nothing, and I just started praying, and this, as I talked about in my book, this good orderly direction, GOD, started to kind of manifest. And I just started to go, I used to go left. Maybe this time I'll turn right. Last time I was at this juncture, I went that way. It didn't work. Let me go this way. And suddenly this kind of inspiration and fortitude kind of came through me to start to step up to do the right thing. And it was, I just started praying every day. And I've done it for the last almost 25 years of my life now. And that seems to be the thing that just gives you that good orderly direction. And that, simply put, is what one day at a time helped me come up out of the darkness up into the light.
It's crazy, man. I've heard it through Christians and everybody that God works in mysterious ways, and that's for sure.
Yeah, and I wasn't seeking I'm not like really, like some real big born-again Christian guy.
Right.
The Christian faith kind of just came back to me. I was raised in a Lutheran household growing up, so when I start praying, and you kind of get connected back to good people who want to see you see you succeed. They want to see you do well. When you're hanging around druggies and dopies and stuff, man, the drugs and the booze take over everything.
Right.
And in spite of your best intentions, you can't do the right thing because you're blocked by addiction. It makes you do the wrong thing. So the trick is first you got to get free of the dependency. Once you're free of the dependency, you know, something's got to fill that time and that void in you, and that's where, you know, quite honestly, for lack of a better description, the Holy Spirit, God, higher power, whatever you want to call it, you know, that thing comes in when you seek it. It comes into you because it's meant to. It's inside you. It's meant to be there. And you know, the dope and the booze kick it out. And once you stop doping and boozing, it comes back. And and those things, you know, and that's when it kind of brought me back to some serious realities, which is, you know, my musical talent was God given. You know, that was put in me because, again, I didn't go seek the music. It found me. So I found that in my life, the things that come to you are the things you're meant to have. And the things that sometimes you desperately go seeking after, sometimes we're not meant to have those things, you know. And if there is sort of a God that presides over us, you have to trust on some level he's got our best interests at heart, you know. So I don't know. Those are just kind of my little philosophies and wisdoms that have come to me over my life that have helped me stay on the right path.
Right. I know you're always writing, of course, but is there any new projects that you're working on?
You know, there is a couple of things that I'm working on, and again, these things come to me. You know, it's funny. One of the working titles I had for my book was Against My Better Judgment. You know, because I realized as I wrote this book that most of the best things that ever happened to me were not my idea. You know, I didn't one day wake up and decided to play the bass. It came to me. Mm-hmm. You know, one day at 16 years of age, this thought hit me, dude, you got to get to California because that's where metal's at. 2 years later, I moved there. I meet Dave within a week. Next thing I'm playing with Dave, Megadeth forms, you know, the inspiration to, you know, for everything, you know, getting married, kids, just all these wonderful blessings I've had in my life came to me. I didn't go seek them out, you know. You know, so yeah, there are a couple of little music projects, one in particular that comes over to me. And I'm always writing and I'm always working on stuff. And sometimes I write and I don't have any clear intention of where it's going to go. It's just for the enjoyment of writing and sort of sticking it away. And it's nice to always have some songs handy because sometimes situations present themselves out of nowhere. And it's like, hey, I got some tunes I can bring to the table.
I've always said thank God for Megadeth, so I'm glad you guys are around as a band.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, man, I got just one or two more questions for you, and I'll let you go.
Okay.
Now, Foreclosure of a Dream. Let's talk about that. You're a big sci-fi fan, so was Foreclosure of a Dream written based on a sci-fi type deal, in your own words?
Well, it's funny. When we were writing the Countdown record, which was actually technically while we were still on the Rust in Peace tour on Clash of the Titans, I was reading some Heinlein books by the author Heinlein, and this one in particular was called Farmer in the Sky. And Dave and I saw this TV show that said something to the effect of Foreclosure of a Dream, and we kept that title for a few years. And one day, while we're on Clash of the Titans, Dave says, "Hey, why don't you know, this whole farming crisis has been going on, Farm Aid, all this stuff. It's just devastating for the Midwest where I grew up." He said, "You know, you come from that. Why don't you write a song about that under the title of Foreclosure of a Dream? Because that's exactly what happened to your family, a lot of their friends, the area where you grew up." And it was so funny because I was reading this book right at that same time, and it all just fit together. I took the realities of what happened in the farming crisis in the USA and coupled it together with this sort of hope of a sci-fi ending. And that's basically how I wrote Foreclosure of a Dream.
That's awesome, man, because I was reading about it, and I was like, that's very interesting, because I always wondered how some of the inspirations come up with, you know, with bands and everything, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Unlikely ways, you know. One
last question here. When you guys are on tour, plus getting emails and things like that, how does it feel when the fans reach out to you and say, you know, your music has helped us, and you know, it's pulled us through dark alleys? How does that make you guys feel, or especially you?
It's great. It's you know, it makes you realize that your music goes out. It's like a ripple in a pond. You know, you throw the rock in, you see where the rock went in, and sometimes you pay attention to the rock, and you're not really watching how far and wide those ripples go out on the water. You know, and that's what this is. It's you realize how many people you've touched. And music, even your own songs, mean different things to different people. When people hear a song in a dark time of their life, all of a sudden, either the music or the lyric or the combination of it moves them in a different way, and somehow they feel optimism and it pulls it out. And that may not even be what we wrote the song about. Mm-hmm. The song may be about some totally other topic, and that's always the thing I find funny is when people come to me and talk about In My Darkest Hour, for instance. Oh, that song saved my life, and that she was in it. I was like, geez, dude, that's like one of the dark, more morose songs we've written. Yet, it somehow the listener heard it, and it filtered through their mind and turned into something positive, you know. So I've learned, you know, there's power in music in a way that, you know, that connects us all together. It unites us and it moves us, and to me, that's really such a cool gift to be able to go out and keep playing after all these years, to be able to do that for people.
It's like I've always said, it's crazy how, you know, this song comes out to be this way, but everybody interprets it in their own way, which is really cool, but it all connects us like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, and that's why sometimes, you know, you write your tune, you put it out there, and you kind of leave the results up to, you know, let it just be what it is for people.
David, I want to thank you so much for taking time out to do this interview with me. Like I said, I've been a huge fan of Megadeth since the first day I heard you guys. I keep telling everybody the mighty Megadeth will still be around forever. So
cool. Well, thanks, John. Appreciate your support, man. It's nice talking to you today.
Hey, man, no problem. How can people pick up your book, My Life with Deth? How can they do that?
It's available everywhere, especially in English-speaking countries in North America and certain in the UK and Australia and that. But if you need to grab it, we're running a promotion right now through changinghands.com/DETH. That's actually a Black Friday special that we're running up through, I think, Friday, December 13th, where you can order it and I will personalize it for you. And hopefully you'll get it even before the holidays. And then there's also My Life with Deth book.com, and that'll take you to all the online distributors, so anyone anywhere around the world can order it there.
Awesome. Before I let you go, will you care to do the promo for a show for me?
Sure, yeah. Hi, this is David Ellefson from Megadeth, and we are here hanging with BODS Mayhem Hour.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate it, man.
Okay, thanks, John. Perfect. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
All right, later.
Yeah, bye.
I want to thank Mr. David Ellefson of Megadeth for stopping in this evening and doing an interview with me. And I'll tell you what, guys, if you get a chance, pick up his autobiography called My Life with Deth. Stick around. We got some Megadeth coming up for you guys and gals that are out there listening in the chat room and out there listening on your iPad, iPod, your phone, whatever that you listen to the show on. I really do appreciate it. You only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour and Uber City Radio. Thanks, everybody.